answer question. Now let me start by saying it is a discipline that I think we must develop and master, not just because it is important in terms of your examinations and assignments, but because how you answer question is directly related to how you preach and express yourself. How you answer questions is directly related to how you preach and how you express yourself. Now, how do you then tackle essay questions? Because our course is the essay type, okay? We are not giving you multiple choice to say, Jesus was born, A, Nazareth, B, Bethlehem, C, Capernaum, D, Jericho, and then you choose one. We are not doing that. That's for primary school kids, okay? We are not doing that at all. Ours is an essay sort of assignment. So we require you to express yourself. So how do you deal with essay questions? How do you deal with essay questions? Which is the format that we have at Wisdom Training Center. Number one, read the question several times over. Read the question several times over. Read the question several times over. So that you can be sure you have not missed something in the question. Again, I see most of your work, and what happens is, it seems like you understood some parts of the question, some other parts you didn't understand. The problem is sometimes the two parts are related, and therefore your answer will on the whole be wrong. So sometimes, you read something and you discover, no, I didn't see this. Oh, I didn't see that. Our minds skip some things when we read. So it's not enough to read the first time. Read it again and read it again. Please, that is so cliche. It is so commonplace, ordinary. But I'll tell you, most mistakes happen because we miss something in the question. Okay? So read the question several times over. Number two, identify the difficult words in the question. 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 You might read a question and find there's a word that you don't understand. Don't run headlong to answer the question just because you think you understand the general tone of the question. No, please. Maybe there is a thing in Q4, and by the way, there's a problem between Q4 and Q5. There's repetition there. Did you notice that? That's right. But there's one of you who did very well. You just keep the other repeated parts, which is common sense, isn't it? There was a problem in terms of the printout. We didn't print the right one for Q5. We printed an old page because the course has been redone, you see. But then we'll correct that. So I apologize to you for that one. But there is somebody who actually understood. And I indicated, I said, thank you for noticing that and thank you for correcting it. All right? Now, what I'm saying is, what was I saying before I said that? Identify. Thank you. Identify. So I was saying in Q4, for example, in Q4, you have this thing discussed a proposition that the Roman Catholic Church holds something like apostolic succession. It will shock you what people began to discuss. I tell you, irrelevant. Somebody said Peter, the Apostle Peter, was the first apostle in the Roman Catholic Church. And you see, you're missing the point because you're looking at the word apostle in the ordinary sense. Think, what does apostolic succession as a combination of two words mean? Okay? We explained it in class, but you might need to think again, okay, what does it actually mean? It is this belief within Roman Catholicism that in fact the leadership of the church was led by Christ to the first Pope Peter and then to subsequent popes, so that then they are infallible, so that then they are inerrant, so you know, this kind of thing. So again, identify the difficult words and consult a dictionary if you have to, because this course comes to you in English, yes? And English isn't our first language, is it? So you might find a word that doesn't make sense. Make sure you understand that word first. So that's number 2. Number 3. And in number 3, I will have different subsections within number 3. Ask questions to the question is number 3. Ask questions to the question. Ask questions to the question. Well, the question is asking you a question, isn't it? Turn back the question to that question and ask it questions. And here are the questions I need you to ask the question. You are presented the question, it is asking you something. Before you answer it, ask it questions. And the questions you're going to ask it are the following. 1. We're in number 3, okay? Number 3, part 1. What is this question asking me? What is this question asking me? What exactly is it testing? What does it want from me? Now, that will help you to keep to the scope of the question. You understand? Because again, I appreciate some of you writing many pages, but sadly, those pages are irrelevant. That's the problem. I appreciate the question, the effort to write more. That's good. But why would you write more if it's irrelevant? That's because you never ask the question what the question is asking you. Now, we have a principle in communication, I think I told you last time during our rhetoric class. Never use 2 bullets when 1 is enough. Okay? Never use 2 bullets when 1 is enough. The other way of putting that is never flog a dead horse. Don't flog a dead horse. The horse is dead. Stop beating it. Okay? I mean, just know what to answer. The question has asked me about the identity of Jesus. Why should I be talking about the Holy Spirit? For example. You're being irrelevant now. Get the point? So what is the question asking me? Be precise. Be succinct. And number 3, asking questions to the questions. Number 2, you are asking the question, what area of my learning are you testing? What area of my learning are you testing? What area of my learning are you testing? Because every question is testing something. You are understanding in a certain field. For example, if I'm to bring a question like this is an example, okay? A question like this. Explain the humiliation of Christ. Explain the humiliation of Christ as a salvific event. Explain the humiliation of Christ as a salvific event. Now, I've read the question several times. And then in the second place, there are words which I don't understand. For example, there is a word there, salvific. What does the word salvific mean? And then I go to my dictionary, and I go to my textbooks, and I ask questions to people, and it means that which is redeeming, that which is saving. Something saving is something salvific, right? Okay, but the humiliation of Christ, what exactly does it mean? It means those stages of Christ's life where he was abased, where he was deprecated, where he was brought low. All right? Okay, so I've understood the difficult parts of that question. Now I'm saying, what area of my learning is it examining? And I remember, we dealt with this in Christology. So this is testing my Christology. This is testing my understanding of the work, person, and accomplishments of Jesus Christ. That's the department of my learning, because I've been learning for 2 years now, haven't I? That's the department it is testing. So I will go to my certificate notes. Oh, you didn't think of the diploma, you need your certificate. You see, diploma is just an extension of this. Actually, when you give you a diploma certificate, it is because it is combining the first year certificate and the second year. That together is what means diploma. Diploma is 2 years, but you do the first one in certificate. Okay? So you ask the question, what department of my learning is this question examining? What area of my learning is it testing? If you don't get that right, you will say so many things. Some of you have said, you've written so many good things, but they are irrelevant. I'm not saying the things you've written about, they are good. But they don't answer the question, because you've not asked the question, what area of my learning is this question examining? Number 3, under the same third stage, asking questions to the question. Number 3, and this is so important. Oh dear, this is so important. Here it is. On what word, or on which word, which phrase does this question turn? On which word or which phrase does this question turn? We talk about the pivot. Do you understand the word pivot of the question? The fulcrum. You know, if you look at that door or this door over here, that door turns to close or to open. Which is the function of a door? To open or to close? To open or close? But what is the fulcrum? What is the pivot? Upon what part of that door does it turn? What do we call those 2 things? Or 3? Hinges. It's a very small thing, isn't it? But it is what makes the door perform its function. So in a question, there will be those hinges, those pivots. For example, and I took J3, Q4 as an example. And let me read it out to you. J3, Q4. J3, Q4 asks the following question. Make a scripturally and historically reasoned defense of Acts 28, verse 30 to verse 31. As scripturally and historically. So I'm going to be looking at scripture and I'm going to be looking at history. Make a reasoned defense. So what am I going to be doing? I'm not going to be explaining. I'm not going to be listing. I'm going to be defending. The point is the word there. There it is. That's the part one of that question. The part two is fulfillment and vindication of the Lord's commission in Acts chapter 1, verse 8. So there is Acts 28, 30, 31 on one hand, and then there is Acts 1, verse 8 on the other hand. These are the two parts which I need to reason out scripturally and historically and make a defense about. But what word connects the first part and the second part? It's a two-letter word. Show it to me. I'm going to read again so that you notice it. Make a scripturally and historically reasoned defense of Acts 28, 30, 31 as a fulfillment and vindication of the Lord's commission in Acts 1, verse 8. So what is the connecting word? What is the pivot? What is the fulcrum?
I think it is the defense.
No. I said it's a two-letter word. Fulfillment is not two-letter. It's a two-letter word. Reason is not a two-letter word. Two letters, as in A-B. Okay.
I think it's the message concerning the going.
No. I want a word appearing there in the question, which is only two letters, yet it is the pivot. Do you see why now you struggle to answer questions? That's where the struggle comes in. Huh? Where's the word in there? I don't even see it in the question. There's not even the word in there.
I was writing the question, but I didn't finish it. Make a scripturally and historically.
Reason, defense of... you shouldn't be writing it because it's somewhere there in your coursework, all right? Make a scripturally and historically reason defense of Acts 28, 30, 31 as a fulfillment and vindication of the Lord's commission in... Okay, the word in is there. Okay, I see it. In Acts 1, 8. But I even emphasize in my reading. Us. Us. That's where the question turns. What happens in Acts 28, 30 to 31 is a fulfillment of Acts 1, 8. All right? So my defense is of Acts 28, 30, 31 as the fulfillment. As the fulfillment. Such a small word. Such a small word. Yet the question turns on that word. Now, you say, Mwalimu, maybe you're stretching this matter. Let me show you practically what that means in interpreting scripture. And here's a verse you all know, very familiar, very common. John chapter 3, verse 16. But how many people have misinterpreted John 3, 16 by failing to identify that word on which that verse stands? Let me quote it. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting... What's the operative word? So. I even emphasized it when I was quoting it. So. God didn't just love the world, he so loved the world. This is how much he loved the world. I am so angry that I'm not going to teach you tomorrow. The word so emphasizes the level of my anger. Get the point? The word so in John 3:16 emphasizes the intensity of God's love. That kind of love that would make God give Christ. On that word, that verse stands. Two letters, one word. For God so loved the world. Okay, take another example. I want to quote a text here. What text am I quoting? Ephesians chapter 6, from verse 10 all the way, I think, to verse 13. Paul says, therefore, Put on the whole. Ooh. Well, if you begin to read from verse 1 all the way to verse 18, you can begin to understand why therefore. It's a conclusion, isn't it? In the light of what I've said, these are the conclusions. Therefore, see, there are tiny words that make the whole difference. So it's not just an academic thing we're saying here. And I told you earlier on, the way you answer a question has a direct relationship to the way you preach and even interpret scripture. So this is quite important. Okay? So what did I say then? Identify the operative word, all right? On which word or phrase does the question turn? Number 4. Remember, we are still in part 3, all right? We said read the question several times, part 1, part 2. Consult dictionary where a word doesn't make sense, we don't understand. Now we're in part 3. Ask questions to the questions. And so the first question is, what is the question asking me? Number 2, what area of my learning is it testing? Number 3, on what word, on what phrase does the question turn? Number 4, how many parts are there to this question? Because that will give you the structure of the question. How many parts are there to this question? How many parts are there to this question? How many parts are there to this question? A question will always have several parts. And by the way, I mark you according to the structure of the question. Let me take an example. I'm in unit J1, okay? I'm in unit J1. That's what I'm looking at right now. I could look any of the questions I give you. They all have structure, right? They all have parts. So let's read unit J1, Q1. Carefully explain historical theology and church history as a discipline of theological learning. Okay, that's the first part. And there's a comma after that. What am I required to do is to define historical theology and church history as a discipline. I need to give a definition. That may take a paragraph, for example, of say 6, 7, 8 lines, sentences, paragraph. I need to define it. I need to explain it. What is it? So that somebody who doesn't know or has never heard of something called historical theology and church history can look at my writing and say, I understand. That's the first part. Then, and list. Second part of the question. And list with explanation. See, I'm going to list with explanation. I list with explanation. The second part. List with explanation some of the benefits of engaging in this study. So I have 2 parts to this question. The first part is to define historical theology and church history. The second part is to list with explanation its benefits so that I can follow you. Get the point? Isn't that the way we preach? Or we should preach? There should be a structure to what I'm doing. There should be a structure to what I'm doing. So again, notice it is something that is so small, yet it rules our lives, doesn't it? I mean, if I'm going to preach, it's got to be in that way. So how many parts are there to the question? How many parts are there to the question? Because that would be the structure, isn't it? Maybe you might find there are 3 parts. Give me a 3-part answer. So that I know you're dealing with this first, you're dealing with that, I can follow you. And I have fellowship with your writing. It's good, it's enjoyable. But if I'm trying to find points, and sometimes you see I put a tick on top of a word, because that's the only word I think makes sense in the things that you've written. So anyway, I don't want to sort of discourage you too much. Okay. Part 4 now. All those questions we have asked under part 3, all right? Part 4. Part 4. Collect relevant information from readings and course material. Collect relevant, and I say relevant, information from your readings and course material supplied or suggested to you. collect relevant information from the readings and course material either supplied to you or recommended for you. Collect relevant information from readings and course materials supplied to you or recommended for you. Now, in this part 4, I want to give you 2 things or 2 helps under part 4, right? Help number 1. Do your readings with a question in mind. Do your readings with a question in mind. Do your readings with a question in mind. That is why I said read the questions several times over. The first part, yes? You know, if I know, for example, again, let me just choose something here. Maybe unit J3, question 6, all right? Unit J5, question 6. Unit J5, Q6. From scripture and reference to the canons of Dot, make a defense of the 5 points of Calvinism. So I know that's a question somewhere. That's a question somewhere. There's a question that requires me to deal with 5 points of Calvinism, which are the canons of Dot, actually. I know that. It's somewhere in the back of my mind. So as I'm reading, that question is there. Then, Osambula, I find something that deals with the canons of Dot. I will note it. Because I'm reading with questions in mind. I know where material for this question is to be found. Now, which brings me to the second thing then. In part 4, the second thing then in part 4 is find the commensurate point. By commensurate, I mean the appropriate point, isn't it? So I'm reading with the question in my mind, and then I found, oh, this reading actually deals with the canons of Dot. I will go back to J5, Q6, and make a note. And I'll say, reading 4, paragraph 6. On top of that question. So that when I come to answer it, I know there's material here. I'm making references. Get the point? Did you follow what I say? Okay, I'm reading material. Maybe it's a book. Maybe it's just a reading we provide you. But I'm reading it with the questions in my mind. I know the questions, isn't it? So I come to a place in that reading, maybe it's reading 7. And in reading 7, I find the writer is dealing with the canons of Dot. I remember there's a question dealing with the canons of Dot. So what I will do, I will make sure I draw a nexus. I connect a link between what I'm reading with that question before I proceed. So I will go back to J5, Q6, and say on top there, reading 7, paragraph 6. That's where there is material to answer this question. And then I continue reading. I find another reading which deals with that. I will make reference. So when I come to do my writing, I exactly know where to go to find material. Where to go to find material. Does that make sense? Okay, so those are the 2 things then. Do the readings with questions at the back of your mind, and whenever you find something in the reading, please make connections. Part 5. Come up with a rough draft. Come up with a rough draft. Come up with a rough draft. Now, how do you come up with a rough draft? I've done all my readings, all right? I've done all the connections, all right? Where the answer is to be found, I've noted points. The thoughts that come in my mind, I note them down under that question, isn't it? They're just sketch. Maybe I'm in K1, K0, okay? Let's say K0, okay? K0, Q1, okay? Maybe I'm there, and I've collected number 1, that in reading 4, paragraph 6, there is an answer there, isn't it? And then I've come and noticed that another thought I thought about is, Mwalimu once said this, and it doesn't appear in the reading, because there are many things I say in class which don't appear in the reading.
Yes.
Okay? So say, I remember that from my own notes. You also can bring that thought here. Deity of Christ, maybe. Deity of Christ, that's a point that needs to go into the answer. Okay? And those thoughts, I've collected them under. Now I come and say, okay, Q1, J1, Q1, or K0, Q1, which is the example we're using. I have these several points under that, isn't it? That's a rough draft. Actually, that's a sketch one. Okay? So I have a sketch for every question. Now I come and form my rough draft by scribbling notes. Now I'm fleshing it up. I'm only opening it up more. I'm giving sentences to words. Okay? After I've done all that, I come and say, did I make sense to myself? That's the last question you're asking. Did I make sense to myself? Did I make sense to myself in the work I've done? Would I have convinced myself with this kind of reasoning? Would I have convinced myself? Because I believe, and reading through your work, sometimes I wonder whether you yourself believe what you say, or you're just feeling paper. What doesn't compel you cannot compel another person. And that's a principle we have in preaching, by the way. If the message did not affect you, if it did not move you, don't expect it to move other people. It will not. If it never moved you, it will not move the people. If it never made sense to you, it will never make sense to other. By the way, have you come across people who try to express a point and they say, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to put it. I don't know. Just understand it. But how do I understand it? If you don't know how to put it. I meet a lot of people like that, by the way. But just understand what I'm trying to tell you, brother. I don't have words for it, but sorry, if you can't say it, how do you expect me to understand it? You get the point? And sometimes that's the way we do it. I have a brother in our church here who is a good preacher, by the way. He's a good preacher. I like him. He has a lot of theology in his head, and that's good. But sometimes he speaks, and I can see there's a disconnect between his mind and his mouth. From where I'm sitting, I can see he's struggling between his mind. The concept is there in his head. It is there. It is there. But he can't bring it out. So he uses a lot of words and he struggles. And I'm thinking, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So ask yourself, read your work and say, does it make sense to me? Can it convince me? Because it can't convince. Yes, correct. On paper and in preaching. Okay. Does it make sense to me? Do I understand this? Does it speak to me? And sometimes in the process of then asking those questions, you also have to look at the words you've used. Mr. Sambla, you, for example, would have to say, is this the correct word that should be here? Or am I using this word because I love this word? You know, we have pet words. Pet words. Words that we love to use all the time. And so even when they're appropriate or not appropriate, we just put them in there because they sound nice to us. So go through your work and say, is this the word here? When I, for example, say, the Lord Jesus Christ tried to convince the disciples, is this the word I should use? The word try. The Lord never tried anything. The Lord did what he did. He never tried. Is this the word I should use? My teacher, Keith Underhill, you know, he introduced me to an English word. which I've never forgotten to date. He said, in one of the papers that I wrote to him, he said, this is good material, but this word is not ameliorate. I said, ameliorate. I've never heard of the word ameliorate in my life. And he laughed at me. He sometimes does that. He laughed at me and said, I got you that one. He's an Englishman, you see. So he explained to me, something ameliorate is something fitting, something that is appropriate. It is exactly for the place. You know,
Sufficient.
not just sufficient,
Enough.
not enough. It fits. It is at home in the sentence. That's where it's supposed to be. Okay. You know, you can force a word. Let me give you an example. That's the word I want to use here. Or let me even give you something I've written here. As part of the question, what area of my learning is it testing? Should I use the word learning? Should I use the word education? Which is more appropriate? You see, both words can be okay to be used. But what is that which is ameliorate? It's there. It fits. It's okay. It belongs there. Okay? Or should I use the word department? Had I used the word, what department of my learning? Well, is to still communicate to you, but the word is not ameliorate. So point. So again, in trying to look at your work, that's what you do. You do that. Tessa Sked just edited one of my books, and she's returned it. And she has many places saying, the word is good, but it doesn't quite fit here. It's not like it's wrong, it's just not the word for this place.
It's not wrong, it's not good. But it's not fitting.
It's not ameliorate. It's not ameliorate.
It's not the most appropriate.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Somebody said, what can be said better. If it can be said at all, it should be said better. Yeah? So always seek to improve what you say. Don't settle for just a work that you've submitted. Push yourself towards excellence, right? Push yourself towards excellence. Produce a work which 10 years from now, Ali, you will look back and say, yeah, I tried my best. That was good. Because 10 years from now, you will have greater knowledge than you have. You will have better wisdom. Yet don't look back at your work and be ashamed of them. I try to look at the work I did when I was in college. Well, I can correct them now because I know more, but I'm happy about them because at any one given time, I tried to give my best. I tried.
Always.
Yeah. Don't be ashamed of your work 10 years from now, okay?
Yes, yes.
So try it. I mean, that's it. Give it your all. So that's how you tackle questions, all right? Now, here's one more thing that I must say, because I think that's where probably you have most struggles. Creating a student's life. I think most of you have not done that. And it shows in your work. You still do this course as if it's just one of the little things of your life. Therefore, your commitment doesn't show through. One of the things you've got to develop is a student life. This will benefit you extremely if you do that. If you don't, it will be substandard. You'll benefit somewhat, but it won't be the maximum that should be. Develop a student life. Say, I'm a student. This is who I am. And I'm going to commit time. Did we say 4 hours in a day? That's what we said, yes? Don't fall short of that. And if you fall short in one day because of one commitment, compensate it another time. So that the next day you do 6 hours, the other day you do 6 hours, you've compensated 4 in 2 days. That's what you do. That discipline will pay. It will pay you. People say, Mwalimu, how did you get where you are? Yes, the discipline. No pain.
No gain.
Okay, that's it. I will stop there for now. Unless you have a question, I want to hear it. Do you have a question?